Hi friends, Angie Power Disney again, Angela Power Disney. I'm going to do a long overdue thing that I offered to do for Fiona Barnett probably a year ago when her book first came out. I offered to do an audio reading because I think it's valuable to get these documented evidence-based recordings of the reality of satanic ritual abuse. To document it. I still hear people saying, oh, there's no such thing and it's satanic panic and there's never been a prosecuted case, which is, of course, is untrue. It's all untrue. You know, stateside, we have, so many cases, the McMartin preschool, the Presidio, what was that cover up? The one that they made a documentary and then they pulled it just the night before it was supposed to air on British TV. It'll come to me anyway, but it's been covered up both sides of the Atlantic and no doubt in Australia as well, different countries. So I'm just trying to leave behind some audio versions of scholarly books proving otherwise. So I believe Fiona Barnett. I was sad at the way it went with Isaac Cappy. I was sad at some of the videos she put up after his visit and sad to hear him saying that she embellished some of her story towards the end. But I've been telling the truth and researching the truth long enough to know from my own experience and from research, I believe Fiona Barnett. She's got some things wrong and she's made some mistakes, but we're all human. I do believe her testimony. So I'm going to do a reading of her book and I'll probably do it in like half-hour chunks to make it manageable and then put it in a blog on a playlist. So here we go. Free ebook, Fiona, Eyes Wide Open. I didn't set this up yet. I might have to magnify it, so just bear with me. My eyesight's not great and my good glasses are broken. So we'll go up a couple of, and then we'll start Eyes Wide Open by Fiona Barnett. I do believe an American girl did a reading as well, which is great, but just it's good to get this kind of stuff documented and to reach the widest number of people possible. To end this, not to glorify it, to end it. And this is one option for book writing where you just make a free PDF and put it out there. So I'll start from here. The worst thing about being an inspiration is that you have to be perfect. Quote from Anne MacDonald. Eyes Wide Open is not a biography as such, and descriptive dialogue is limited. Consider it more a reference book designed to meet three distinct aims. 1, provide the relevant historical basis for understanding the existence and cover-up of CIA child trafficking, ritual abuse, and mind control. 2, document my personal experience of this abuse in Australia and the USA. This is Fiona Barnett talking. 3, offer information for combating the techniques which cults, the military, and intelligence agencies use to artificially induce dissociation and achieve radical and strategic behavior modification. I explain the nature of trauma-based forced dissociation, including the victim selection process, why most therapy is ineffective, and why a trauma-focused integration approach is essential. Now again, it's Fiona's views, but I believe her testimony, a lot of it can corroborates my own in a different way, but I was a victim of MK Ultra mind control, trauma-based mind control projects within the Royal Air Force from the mid-1950s. And I've written about that. Well, I've not written a book, but I've talked about that a lot online. Okay, my testimony, says Fiona, is scaffolded by the extraordinary research, yes, of Steve McMurray, who assembled the jigsaw of faces, places, and relationships I recalled and relayed. Steve's work features mainly in the chapter MK Ultra in Australia. This book would not exist and my integration would not have been as thorough without Steve's research efforts. The following publications provide a preliminary understanding of ritual abuse and mind control, which my book builds upon. Secrets Don't Tell, The Encyclopedia of Hypnotism, 1998 by Carla Emery. How the Illuminati Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave, 2008, and Bloodlines of the Illuminati, 1998, by Fritz Springmeier and his wife Cisco Wheeler, I beg your pardon. A Nation Betrayed, Secret Cold War Experiments Performed on Our Children and Other Innocent People, 2002, by Carol Rutz. And the Greenbaum Speech, 1992-3, conference presentation by Dr. Corydon Hammond. The Bible suggests we may know them by their fruits. That is, we recognize the wolves in sheepskins by the consequences of their words and behavior. Be they arrogant, academic, or bottom-feeding troll, anyone who attempts to discredit the above writings is certainly an operative for the trafficking network. Similarly, whoever attacks my book has a vested interest in the lucrative international child trafficking operation coordinated by the CIA. This electronic version of Eyes Wide Open is being distributed at no cost because the truth and healing ought to be free. Victims have paid enough. The public is welcome to download, distribute, and host complete copies of this book version online for therapeutic purposes. Flooding the internet with multiple copies combats the increasing censorship and stops the child traffickers burying this information again. I am hoping to do interviews with both Fiona Barnett and Steve McMurray in the near future. Please subscribe. Who's this crypto beast? That's Steve Outram. See also the Sawman, the Priest, and the Fifi dossier. Fiona's police statements, mainstream media articles about Fiona Barnett's allegations and advocacy. So I'll leave a link to this PDF as well as doing an audio reading so that you can go to the different, well, I'll take my time as well. I'll play the little things as well, because this is deep and almost as historical as Elisa and Gabriel's disclosures, although with them, it was just amazing to get children's disclosures while they were still children. But here we go. Bill Heffernan addresses abuse allegations.
We should include in the terms of reference the institution of the law. And I have documents here which the Royal Commission has seen to justify that case. And in fact, every Attorney General, from Attorney General Ruddock till now, has seen some of these documents. And they are police documents, and they are very disturbing. So having produced a set of documents to the Royal Commission under an order to produce, which includes, disturbingly, documents that name in one document 28 people as alleged pedophiles, signed off by Gary Crook QC, counsel assisting an earlier Royal Commission, includes a whole lot of prominent people. And I think to protect the discretion of the Royal Commission, I won't comment on what the Commission thought, except that they thought it was outside the terms of reference of the Royal Commission. We have in Australia, sadly, a compromise at the highest of levels. There's a former Prime Minister on this list, and it is a police document.
Yeah, and just on that, you know, people scream about confidentiality, but we have to find a new framework for confidentiality, because if it means covering up organised child abuse, then we have to breach normal confidentiality. I attended a 6-day course in California in what I later discovered was a cult based on L. Ron Hubbard's work and you know, CIA connected, and Council of Nine at the Esalen Institute connected, Satanism connected, Jack Parsons, Alan Watts. I was in that cult not knowing it was a cult, and I attended a 6-day course in the Napa Valley on an old ex-Marine boot camp, training camp. And I believe 2 of Bob Hawke's children were on that course and disclosed. And I didn't even know who Bob Hawke was. He was the Prime Minister of Australia. And these sort of children they must have been over 18, because we had to be in that course. But they were disclosing, and there was a big panic around the course about confidentiality should never be breached. And I haven't breached the details of it. I have tracked down Bob Hawke's daughter and asked her, would she be willing to come forward and corroborate the likes of Fiona Barnett's disclosures. She didn't block me. She's still a Facebook friend. But to my knowledge, she hasn't elaborated. And, you know, so I don't recall the exact details. I just recall a big panic amongst the staff about, you know, we've got a politician's child or children here disclosing, and everybody signed a confidentiality agreement. Nobody must ever mention what they've heard, you know. So we'll play a bit from this. This was one of Fiona's outside the court speeches.
Throughout my childhood, I was the victim of Australia's VIP child sex trafficking ring. For example, I was prostituted to pedophile parties at Parliament House, Canberra, and to an international leader at Fairbanks Military Airport. The people involved in this elite pedophile ring included high-ranking politicians, police, and judiciary. From the late 1980s, I reported my abuse experiences to multiple healthcare professionals, not one of whom adhered to mandatory reporting requirements. I reported to New South Wales Police in 2008. I reported to the Royal Commission in 2012. I reported to Operation and Test in Canberra. I made formal witness statements to New South Wales Police and have agreed to do more. I've reported directly to the New South Wales and Federal Police Commissioners and to the New South Wales Coroner. I have provided sufficient names, times, dates, and places for authorities to investigate. My experiences were horrific beyond words. I witnessed child abduction, torture, rape, murder. But the way I've been treated for reporting the crimes I've witnessed and experienced has been far worse than my original abuse experiences. Victims endure the most miserable childhoods. We then spend the rest of our lives paying for the crimes committed against us. Victims are constantly placed under excessive scrutiny. If we can't provide a precise time and date for something that happened 40 years ago, we're put liars. If we get emotional, we're labelled crazy. If we are vocal, we're just attention seekers. It's time to focus our attention away from victims and onto those responsible for the crimes against children. In the 2006 census, Australians identified child protection as their #1 concern. Why then does our government continue to ignore the public's concern for children? Australia is a pedophile haven. Our laws are written, interpreted and administered in a way that benefits pedophiles and silences victims of crime. Our university lecturers teach pro-pedophilia material. Our health boards continue to allow offending doctors and psychologists to practice. We are up to our second Royal Commission into child abuse in 20 years. The Wood Royal Commission was indeed a failure. If it was successful, I wouldn't be standing here right now. The Wood Royal Commission was established in response to complaints about the VIP pedophile ring that abused me. This is the exact same elite pedophile ring that I reported to the current Royal Commission. In 2013, I asked the Royal Commission, what are you going to do differently to the failed Royal Commission? They had no answer for me. If the Royal Commission does not result in the investigation and prosecution of the VIP pedophiles that victims like me have named, then they are just information gathering. I know you want me to stand here and name names. Yet to concentrate on the names serves to shift the focus from the entire reason I'm standing here. I have provided the names to the authorities. It is their responsibility to combine my information with what other victims have presented and properly investigate. And now I will give you some VIP names. Michelle. Michelle was a friendly 12-year-old with long dark hair. I witnessed her abduction, rape and murder when I was 6 years old. Samantha. Samantha was 9 years old with wavy long brown hair and a warm smile. She had Down syndrome. Samantha was murdered when I was 12 years old. Chloe. Chloe was an attractive 4-year-old with brown straight cut hair into a bob and sea green eyes. Chloe was murdered when I was 14 years old. Don't make this about me. Focus on those victims who couldn't be here today to personally share what happened to them at the hands of the VIP pedophiles who have infiltrated Australia's supreme institutions.
Well said. Sorry for the bad audio. Phew. Australia's top cleric, George Pell, was considered the number 3 person in the Vatican power structure. He was recently sentenced to jail for 6 years for abusing 2 boys in a case gagged by a suppression order, which resulted in 100 journalists facing jail terms just for covering the facts of the case. And a colleague of mine has recently been sentenced, though not to jail, and others are in jail or have been gagged for years. And this is what happens. George Pell, bringing this up to date, has been acquitted and is due to return to the Vatican. Nothing to see here. Let's move along. Appalling, in my opinion. Right, so this is the 5th of January 2001. See, Fiona's so good, she's so forensic with her evidence. St. Patrick's Cathedral, Melbourne, Victoria. Dear Mr. Shanahan, you'll be aware that in October 1996, I announced a range of initiatives. This is from the Archbishop of Melbourne. To respond to allegations of sexual abuse concerning the Archdiocese of Melbourne. At that time, I apologised sincerely and unreservedly on behalf of the Catholic Church to both the victims and more generally to the people of the Melbourne Archdiocese for the betrayal of trust perpetrated upon them. I also expressed my regret that it had taken the Church a long time to come to grips successfully with these issues. I understand that, based on findings made by the Independent Commissioner, your claims have been considered by the compensation panel. The panel has provided me with a recommendation which I accept, and this letter is accompanied by a formal offer made on my behalf. The Archdiocese seeks to address the issues of sexual abuse of minors and adults in a professional, caring, and appropriate manner. In addition, the Church has implemented procedures aimed at preventing any recurrence of sexual abuse and is confident that these initiatives will go a long way towards addressing this issue, which has shocked all in our community. Unfortunately, we cannot change what has happened in the past. You may never be rid of the memories or the hurt. Services such as those provided through CareLink can assist you in your recovery. The payment of compensation raises difficult and complex issues. It is my hope that my offer, based on the panel's recommendation, will be accepted by you as a preferable alternative to legal proceedings, and that it too will assist you with your future. On behalf of the Catholic Church and personally, I apologise to you and to those around you for the wrongs and hurt you have suffered at the hands of Father T. O'Keefe. Whether or not you choose to accept the enclosed offer, I offer you my prayers. George Pell, Archbishop of Melbourne. The victim he is writing to here witnessed a ritual murder of a child by 2 priests. Pell acknowledges and apologises for the abuse. Last year, Fiona Barnett was successful in getting Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison to acknowledge and apologise for institutional ritual abuse. Fiona Barnett to Scott Morrison: when you issue your national apology to victims and survivors of institutional child sexual abuse this Monday, the 22nd of October, please acknowledge victims of ritual abuse by using these very words. This will gain you credibility with the many ritual abuse victims and the therapists. Fiona Barnett, what is ritual abuse? The definition of ritual abuse is abuse that occurs in the context linked to some symbols or group activity that have religious, magical, or supernatural connotation, and where the invocation of these symbols or activities repeated over time is used to frighten and intimidate children. All of this is conducted for the purpose of control so that the abusers can systematically sexually abuse children. A definition according to the 1989 report by the Ritual Abuse Task Force of Los Angeles County Commission for Women. Quote, yeah, is that the same thing? No, it's different. Ritual abuse, this is a quote from Los Angeles County Commission for Women. Ritual abuse usually involves repeated abuse over an extended period of time. The physical abuse is severe, sometimes including torture and killing. The sexual abuse is usually painful, sadistic, and humiliating, intended as a means of gaining dominance over the victim. The psychological abuse is devastating and involves the use of ritual indoctrination. It includes mind control techniques which convey to the victim a profound terror of the cult members and of the evil spirits they believe cult members can command. Both during and after the abuse, most victims are in a state of terror, mind control, and dissociation. The Prime Minister said, the source of that was Kathy Fox blog, the Prime Minister said, quote, today, Australia confronts a trauma, an abomination, hiding in plain sight for far too long. The crimes of ritual sexual abuse happened in schools, churches, youth groups, scout troops, orphanages, foster homes, sporting clubs, group homes, charities, and in family homes. And I'll finish today's reading with just this apology, which does indeed seem to have taken on board Fiona's request to actually name ritual abuse.
To listen in.
Institutional child sexual abuse.
I call the Prime Minister. I move that the House apologise to the victims and survivors of institutional child sexual abuse. Mr. Speaker, let me first welcome all of those who have come here today. Whether you sit here alongside us here in this chamber, In the Great Hall, outside, elsewhere in the nation's capital, in your living room, in your bed, unable to rise today or speak to another soul. Your journey to where you are today has been a long and painful one. And we acknowledge that, and we welcome you today, wherever you are. Mr. Speaker, silenced voices, muffled cries in the darkness, unacknowledged tears, the tyranny of invisible suffering, the never heard pleas of tortured souls bewildered by an indifference to the unthinkable theft of their innocence. Today, Australia confront.
I just have to say this guy is not innocent. Do your research on Scott Morrison. You know, when somebody's saying the right things, but it's just like something's off, something's not hitting home. That's just my opinion. Well, not just my opinion. Do some research on Scott Morrison.
A trauma, an abomination, hiding in plain sight for far too long. Today, we confront a question too horrible to ask, let alone answer. Why weren't the children of our nation loved, nurtured, and protected? Why was their trust betrayed? Why did those who know cover it up? Why were the cries of children and parents ignored? Why was our system of justice blind to injustice? Why has it taken so long to act? Why were other things more important than this, the care of innocent children? Why didn't we believe? Today we dare to ask these questions and finally acknowledge and confront the lost screams of our children. While we can't be so vain to pretend to answers, we must be so humble to fall before those who were forsaken and beg to them our apology. A sorry that dare not ask for forgiveness, a sorry that dare not try and make sense of the incomprehensible or think it could, a sorry that does not insult with an incredible promise, a sorry that speaks only of profound grief and loss. A sorry from a nation that seeks to reach out in compassion into the darkness where you have lived for so long. Nothing we can do now will right the wrongs inflicted on our nation's children. Even after a comprehensive Royal Commission, which finally enabled the voices to be heard and the silence to be broken, we will all continue to struggle. So today we gather in this chamber in humility, not just as representatives of the people of this country, but as fathers, as mothers, as siblings, friends, workmates, and in some cases, indeed as victims and survivors. Ngunnawal means meeting place, and on this day of apology, we meet together. We honour every survivor in this country. We love you, we hear you, and we honour you. No matter if you are here at this meeting place or elsewhere, this apology is to you and for you. Your presence and participation makes tangible our work today, and it gives strength to others who are yet to share what has happened in their world. Elsewhere in this building and around Australia, there are others who are silently watching and listening to these proceedings. Men and women who have never told a soul what has happened to them. To these men and women, I say, this apology is for you too. And later, when the speeches are over and we stand in silence and we remember the victims who are not with us anymore, many too, sadly, by their own hand. As a nation, we failed them, we forsook them, and that will always be our shame. This apology is for them and their families too. As one survivor recently said to me, it wasn't a foreign enemy who did this to us. This was done by Australians to Australians. Enemies in our midst. Enemies in our midst. The enemies of innocence. Look at the galleries. Look at the Great Hall. Look outside this place and you will see men and women from every walk of life, from every generation and every part of our land. Crushed, abused, discarded and forgotten. The crimes of ritual sexual abuse happened in schools, churches, youth groups, scout troops, orphanages, foster homes, sporting clubs, group homes, charities, and in family homes as well. It happened anywhere a predator thought they could get away with it, and the systems within these organisations allowed it to happen and turned a blind eye. It happened day after day, week after week, month after month, decade after decade, unrelenting torment. When a child spoke up, they weren't believed and the crimes continued with impunity. One survivor told me that when he told a teacher of his abuse, that teacher then became his next abuser. Trust broken, innocence betrayed, power and position exploited for evil, dark crimes. A survivor named Faye told the Royal Commission, nothing takes the memories away. It happened 53 years ago and it's still affecting me. I also met with a mother. I met with a survivor named Anne, said my mother believed them rather than me. But I also met with a mother whose two daughters were abused by a priest the family trusted. Suicide would claim one of her two beautiful girls and the other lives under the crushing weight of what was done to her. As a father of two daughters, I can't comprehend the magnitude of what she has faced. Not just as a father, but as a Prime Minister, I am angry too at the calculating destruction of lives and the abuse of trust, including those who have abused the shield of faith and religion to hide their crimes. A shield that is supposed to protect the innocent, not the guilty, and they stand condemned. One survivor says, it was like becoming a stranger to your parents. Mental health illnesses, self-harm and addictions followed. The pain didn't stop with adulthood. Relationships with partners and children became strained as survivors struggled with the conflicting currents within them. Parents and siblings felt guilt and sadness for what they had missed, for what and whom they chose to believe, and for what they did not see, while survivors contemplated what could have been. A survivor named Rodney asked the question so common to so many survivors. He wonders about the person I may have become, or the person I could have become if I did not have all of this in my life. Death can take many forms. In this case, the loss of a life never lived and a life denied. Another survivor, Aidan, spoke of not getting justice because his abuser had died. He said, I was bereft because I was robbed. I was robbed of my day in court. I wanted to tell the world what he did. That was stolen. That was him again taking control. Mr. Speaker, today as a nation, we confront our failure to listen, to believe and to provide justice. And again today we say sorry. To the children we failed, sorry. To the parents whose trust was betrayed and who have struggled to pick up the pieces, sorry. To the whistleblowers who we did not listen to, sorry. to the spouses, partners, wives, husbands, children who have dealt with the consequences of the abuse, cover-ups and obstruction. Sorry. To generations past and present, sorry. Mr. Speaker, as part of our work leading us to this day, I recently met with the National Apology Survivors Reference Group, as did the Leader of the Opposition who are with us here today. I want to thank this wonderful group of people and brave people. Many are survivors. They have all worked so hard to make today a reality. They said to me that an apology without action is just a piece of paper, and it is. And today they also wanted to hear about our actions. It's a fair call. In outlining our actions, I want to recognise the work of my predecessors, former Prime Minister Gillard, who is with us here today, and I thank you for your attendance. Former Prime Minister Rudd, the member for Warringah, who continues to serve us here in this place, and the former Prime Minister, Mr Turnbull. And I want to thank them for their compassion and leadership as they also confronted these terrible failings. The foundations of our actions are the findings and recommendation of the Royal Commission, initiated by Prime Minister Gillard. The steady, compassionate hand of the commissioners and staff resulted in 17,000 survivors coming forward and nearly 8,000 of them recounting their abuse in private sessions of the Commission. We are grateful to the survivors who gave evidence to the Commission. It is because of your strength and your courage that we are gathered here today. Many of the commissioners and staff are also with us today, and I thank them also. Mr Speaker, acting on the recommendations of the Royal Commission with concrete action gives practical meaning to today's apology. The Commonwealth, as our national government, must lead and coordinate our response. The National Redress Scheme has commenced. I thank the state and territory governments for their backing of the scheme. The scheme is about recognising and alleviating the impact of past abuse and providing justice for survivors. The scheme will provide survivors with access to counselling and psychological services, monetary payments, and for those who want one, and I stress for those who want one, a direct personal response from an institution where the abuse occurred. It will mean that after many years, often decades of denials and cover-ups, the institutions responsible for ruining lives admit their wrongdoing and the terrible damage they cause. The National Office of Child Safety is another big step forward to ensuring the prevention and detection of child abuse wherever it occurs. It was announced as part of our government's response to the Royal Commission and was established from July 1 of this year within the Department of Social Services. As Prime Minister, I'll be changing these arrangements to ensure that the National Office of Child Safety will report to me. It will reside within the portfolio of Prime Minister and Cabinet, as it should, and the Minister for Social Services will assist me in this role, including reporting to me on the progress of Royal Commission recommendations and the activities of the Office of Child Safety. The Office has already begun its work to raise awareness of child safety and to drive cultural change in institutions and the community to ensure that systemic failures and abuses of power that brought us here today are not repeated. Importantly, children themselves are being empowered to participate in these initiatives because our children must be heard, and when it comes to the work of safety, it must be approachable and child-friendly. They must know who they can tell, and they must be believed, and they must know where they can go. All Australian governments are now working together to establish a national database to ensure higher standards for working with children and that data about people's ability to work with children is shared nationally. And our work does not stop at our borders. We're ensuring children across the world are protected by stopping child sex offenders from travelling overseas without permission, which will disrupt, prevent and investigate the abuse of children globally. And we recognise that as survivors age, those who are abused in or by an institution have real fears about entering into aged care facilities. It's an understandable fear, given what happened during childhood, and we will work with survivor groups about what we can do to alleviate those fears, and indeed the work of the Royal Commission into aged care will be able to address this as well. And to assist with lasting change, we recognise that there are many survivors who were abused in other settings, such as their own homes and in their communities, who will not be covered by this redress scheme. These survivors also need to be heard and believed and responded to with services to address their needs. So today, I commit to fund the establishment of a national centre of excellence, and I call on the states and territories to work as partners in this venture. This centre will be the place to raise awareness and understanding of the impacts of child sexual abuse, to deal with the stigma, to support help and seeking and guide best practice for training and other services. All of this is just the start. The Australian Government has not rejected a single recommendation of the Royal Commission. We now actively work on 104 of the 122 recommendations that were addressed to the Commonwealth, and the 18 remaining are being closely examined in consultation with states and territories. And today we commit from December this year, we will report back to the Australian people through the Parliament to be held accountable each year on the progress we are making on the recommendations over the next 5 years and then beyond. We will shine a spotlight on all parts of government to ensure we're held accountable. And the institutions which perpetrated this abuse, covered it up and refused to be held accountable must be kept on the hook. Already many of those organisations have made their own apologies and have signed up to be part of the National Redress Scheme, as they should. But there are others yet to join. And today I simply say justice, decency, and the beliefs and values we share as Australians insists that they sign on. Today I also commit to establishing a national museum, a place of truth and commemoration to raise awareness and understanding of the impacts of child sexual abuse. We will work with survivor groups to ensure your stories are recorded, that your truth is told, that our nation does not turn from our shame, and that our nation will never forget the untold horrors you experienced. Through this, we will endeavour to bring some healing to our nation and to learn from our past horrors. We can never promise a world where there are no abusers, but we can promise a country where we commit to hear and believe our children, to work together to keep children safe, to trust them, and most of all, respect their innocence. Mr. Speaker, I present the formal apology to be tabled in this Parliament today, which will be handed to those in the Great Hall shortly. It reflects all of the sentiments that I've expressed on behalf of the Australian people, this Parliament and our government. And I table that. And as I do, I simply say, I believe you, we believe you, your country believes you.
The question is that the motion moved by the Prime Minister be agreed to. The Leader of the Opposition.
Okay.